Some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast. But another rain warning is enforced throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally drier further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days. Things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible £36,000 to be won in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having an extra £3,000 each month to play with. And because it's totally tax-free, you get to keep every penny and spend it however you like. We could be paying for your entire year until 2025. How amazing would that be? For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamonn Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla, Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good to see you. It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, more scandal as it emerges that Chancellor Rachel Reeves has also received thousands of pounds for new clothes from a wealthy donor. Meanwhile, veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott says Sir Keir Starmer is in the pocket of millionaires. Who could disagree? Is Free Gear Keir the greediest Prime Minister in history? I'll be answering that question in just 2 minutes in my big opinion. In the big story, Nigel Farage tells his conference the Reform UK can overtake Conservatives at the next election. Is the most consequential politician of his generation about to change Britain once again? I'll be asking the fearless political double act, the Hamiltons. My Mark Meets guest is broadcasting legend Fred Dinenage, MBE. We'll talk about his 6 decades in front of a microphone, his reaction to the Hugh Edwards scandal, and what he makes of GB News. Is he a fan? Find out shortly. And in my take at 10, woke Oscar-winning actress Dame Emma Thompson and BBC Match of the Day star Gary Lineker have signed an insane open letter calling for an end to fossil fuels. The gap between the North London Champagne socialist elite and the rest of the country has never been wider. Ordinary Brits can't afford the luxury views of these so-called millionaire hypocrites. So, Dame Emma and Gary Lineker will be getting the treatment at 10. And my all-star pundits tonight, writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, former EastEnders actor John Altman, and ex-newspaper editor Neil Wallace. And don't forget, this show has a golden rule: we don't do boring. Not on my watch, I just won't have it. So, is Keir Starmer the greediest PM in history? We'll answer that question straight after the news headlines with the very parsimonious Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. Well, drones have been seized by police after they were flown in breach of airspace restrictions that are in place for the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, which begins tomorrow. Merseyside police said they seized 3 drones earlier today after a temporary airspace restriction covering much of the city centre was put in place. The Prime Minister arrived to the conference centre earlier today. Now, he is intent on shifting attention away from rows over donations and internal number 10 infighting. Upon his arrival, Sir Keir Starmer said the conference would show how Labour are fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country.
Just started. And today we're going to set out, and over the next coming days, how we're fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country. So enjoy conference. Very, very good to be here.
And today was day 2 of the Reform Conference in Birmingham, with party leader Nigel Farage giving his farewell address earlier this afternoon. Last night, Mr Farage told supporters he believes Reform can win the next general election, given the number of people that agree with their principles. He also explained what drove him to stand as Clacton's MP once the election was called earlier this year.
Almost every level, we've been betrayed. And then I thought about what was happening on our streets. And frankly, I thought to myself, Britain is broken. And then I couldn't help it. Well, if Britain is broken, then logically, Britain needs reform.
Now, this year marks the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden and the Battle of Arnhem. Celebrations in the Netherlands this weekend will commemorate 80 years since 1900 Allied troops parachuted into the then-occupied country with the aim of recapturing the bridges of Arnhem. Throughout the day today, the contemporary equivalents of those men recreated the drop at Ginkle Heath in Ida, jumping from an aircraft into the very same space that our troops would have landed 8 decades ago. Earlier, Brigadier Mark Berry told GB News how it felt to be there on the ground today.
I think the struggle that soldiers felt here on the ground, the very, very difficult conditions that they faced, epitomise what any one of us feel we could be called to face in the modern era. And therefore, we come here to commemorate the bravery of those who went before us and to challenge ourselves to think about their bravery and will we be brave enough when our time comes.
And the Met Office has issued a further weather warning with heavy rain and thunderstorms forecast for the rest of the weekend. The alert will remain in place throughout today, covering Wales, the Midlands, the South West and parts of the South East. The forecaster has also warned that people should expect damage to buildings as a result of lightning strikes and also disruption to public transport and flooding, all within the affected areas. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. Now it is back to Mark Dolan tonight.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Wild eco-hypocrisy from Dame Emma Thompson and Gary Lineker. That's in my take at 10. Plus, could Nigel Farage and Reform UK overtake the Conservatives? We'll debate that shortly. But first, my big opinion. The halo has slipped for Saint Keir Starmer, the most pious politician in all Christendom. He gave Boris Johnson hell over Partygate, even though his enjoyment of a lockdown refreshment earned him the nickname Sir Beer Starmer. And he spent 4 years as leader of the opposition banging on about Tory sleaze, cronyism and corruption. The guy's only been in power for 2 and a bit months, but already looks to be a man in a glass house throwing stones. At the start of his premiership, there were concerns over political appointments to the supposedly neutral civil service. Eyebrows were raised when New Labour grandee Alan Milburn began attending meetings at the Department for Health and receiving official documents, in spite of his own personal investments in the private healthcare industry. Pre-election, a senior civil servant in Sue Gray becomes his chief of staff, an overtly political role. And now she's paid more money than he is, plus a £2 million pension pot. What a time to be a socialist. There was the granting of a prized Access All Areas pass to number 10 to Labour donor Lord Wahid Ali, who has handed the party £500,000 in recent years. There was the gift of thousands of pounds from Lord Ali to the Prime Minister's wife, Victoria, for high-end clothes. Now, this is the same Keir Starmer who accepted VIP tickets worth £4,000 from the Football Association to see Taylor Swift at Wembley Arena. Sir Swifty. And his wife got tickets to another gig at Wembley too. Now, I certainly don't wish to drag Mrs. Starmer into a political row. She seems like a very nice lady and long-suffering, having to listen to her husband waffling on at home about how his mother worked for the NHS and how his father was a toolmaker. She deserves an award, frankly, but not free clothes, accessories and concert tickets. Defending his actions won't cut it for a man in Starmer who has based his entire political brand on being holier than thou, more pure than Mother Teresa, Cliff Richard and Mary Berry combined. This is the chart that will come back to haunt the PM, demonstrating that he has received over £100,000 worth of freebies since 2019, the most of any Member of Parliament by a huge margin. But Starmer has previous on this, as the excellent Harvey Jones points out in a cracking piece in the Daily Express this week. While Director of Public Prosecutions, with questions to answer over Jimmy Savile, the Post Office, and most recently Mohammed Al-Fayed, Starmer billed taxpayers for expenses of around £50,000 a year. That's just expenses of 50 grand a year. His successor, Alison Saunders, only billed for a third of that amount. And his combined pension pots are thought to top £1 million, from which Starmer carved out a one-man tax exemption, avoiding a brutal 55% tax on larger pots known as the Pensions Lifetime Allowance. Starmer is facing criticism for accepting a free box at his beloved Arsenal, worth almost £10,000 a year. Now, he said that he needs to be in a box for his security as Prime Minister. Well, here's our former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Remember him? Keeping it real at Southampton FC. Now, Sir Keir's use of a box at Arsenal is not the issue. It is his refusal to pay for it. So why does this whole story matter? Because it's further proof that Sir Keir Starmer's holier-than-thou rhetoric doesn't match his actions. And as a result of this drama, he's earned a range of nicknames that will stick, including two-tier Keir and free gear Keir among them. Plus, he's earning an unwanted reputation too as the greediest Prime Minister in history. Well, the latest is that Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has admitted to receiving a gift of thousands of pounds for her own wardrobe. There is something seriously wrong at the heart of this new government. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to your messages shortly, but first, tonight's top pundits, writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, former EastEnders star, the one and only John Altman, and ex-newspaper editor and media consultant Neil Wallace. Great to see all three of you. My goodness, lots to talk about. Neil Wallace, a week to forget for the Prime Minister.
Oh, very much so. Well, there is this saying that has been in what used to be called Fleet Street, basically national newspapers, all of my career. And this is what brings down Conservative politicians are sex scandals, But what brings down Labour politicians is always money. Always money scandals. And you know what? I never actually expected him to start so quickly.
And so badly.
The sheer, I'm talking about the amount of money, the backhanders, the jaunts, the sheer extravagance of what he is hoovering up every which way he turns. And not only him, he's dragged his wife into it too. But the other thing, as you quite rightly pointed out, it isn't just greedy Sir Keir. Rachel Reeve, the pious Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's going to sting us all in the October budget, warning us about the black hole. Well, she's been shoveling thousands of pounds of free clothes into her own financial black hole, I assume. Then, oh yes, there's the Deputy Prime Minister. She's been pocketing freebies from donors, etc., as well.
Including a New York holiday at the expense of a Labour donor, Lord Wahid Ali, in New York City.
Absolutely. That was astonishing because she went there for a long weekend over New Year and she was actually only... it was valued at £1,250. You couldn't go to Edinburgh for that. No. Wahid Ali has got this huge luxury apartment in New York. It's a joke that it was only worth that. But don't forget David Lammy. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. He's had 10,000 quid as well from a Saudi PR man. They're all at it. And they were all at it even before they won the election and while they were constantly sniping at the Tory government, alleging they were corrupt as well.
OK, well, John Altman, there is another side to this, which is many would argue this is a drop in the ocean compared to Partygate during the pandemic. And, of course, no rules were broken in large.
No, but... yeah, I mean, just harping back to what we were just talking about, I mean, it's unbelievable, especially being a part of the Labour Party. He doesn't exactly sound like a man of the people, does he? And I'm wondering, sitting here listening to all this, whether or not he's got his fingers in many other pies which we don't know about.
Yeah, well, you've heard in my big opinion about how he's managed to negotiate an exemption from this rather significant tax on pensions worth over £1 million. It doesn't really sound like a very sort of left-wing approach. So do you think this could cause long-term damage to Keir Starmer?
Definitely. I think it's dreadful. I mean, he started off on a really bad foot, hasn't he? It's just appalling. I don't think I've seen... I follow the news a lot, and I'm quite political in many ways. And I've never seen a Prime Minister get off to such a bad start, actually.
Although, Nina, I mean, is there too much pearl-clutching going on here? I mean, we know that the Tories love donors too, and this is politics.
Way too much. I mean, it is sheer hypocrisy. You cannot call him the greediest Prime Minister in history when you have Boris Johnson as an obvious example of what greed really means. We're not talking £5,000 for Lady Starmer's frocks and a stylist. That's £5,000. We're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds spent on bloody wallpaper and, new curtains and stuff for 10 Downing Street. And that was not declared properly, and the Tory party were fined for that non-declaration. And Boris's donors, unbelievable. There were a lot of Russian donors, and that was way after the invasion of Ukraine. Boris also stuffed the House of Lords with 10% of the population. The House of Lords is about 800,000, and 800, thank God not, but 8,000...
members, Lords.
800 members, Lords. And 10% are ones who've been put in there by Boris, including Russians, and you have to ask yourself, well, is he repaying debts? And I'd also like to say there's absolute hypocrisy on freebies, particularly on the part of journalists. If journalists can get this whiff of a ticket to a concert, a football match, a flight on an aeroplane, a freebie holiday, they are there with knobs on, and I bet you were too. I have taken...
Exactly. Neil Wallace, who paid for that rather smart sports jacket of yours tonight?
I think it was the wife, actually.
Oh, there you go. Mrs. Wallace. Is she a Neil Wallace donor?
Yeah.
Oh, you're shaking your head when Nina was speaking there.
I mean, look, the Labour Party has a vast majority in the House of Lords. It's simply a matter of fact. So when you come down to what I'm really surprised by, Nina, we quite often diverge on political issues, but the idea that publicly elected politicians, the one who stand up and provide the laws of this country, who lead the mores of this country, set the moral tone of this country, simply by appealing for our vote, are the same as journalists and businessmen. No, you know it's a nonsense.
I'm talking about. I was never corrupt.
It's a nonsense.
I was talking about the idea of people getting free tickets.
But we don't elect Piers Morgan, do we, or Jeremy Clarkson?
No, we're not. That's not what we're talking about. But journalists have their own influence, and so
but they're not elected.
Never mind elected or not. It's a question of freebies. But besides which, Victoria... What? I was going to say, we need the leaders of our country to look good on the international stage. Look at... Nobody's, for 1 minute, saying that the Trumps have to... The Trumps are millionaires.
OK, listen, this is
Macron gets
clearly
Chanel.
kicked off. We are going to continue this with the papers at 10:30 because let me tell you that Freebiegate is all over tomorrow's front pages. But next up in the big story, Nigel Farage tells his conference that Reform UK can overtake the Conservatives at the next election. So, is the most consequential politician of his generation about to change Britain once again? I'll be asking fearless political double act, the Hamiltons, next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry has got in touch with a lot of people surrounding the royals about a possible return, some sort of easing himself back into what goes on in this country, and tries to repair his image. This has been reported today in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, the major move is being branded as Operation Bring Harry In from the Cold, as he's allegedly growing dissatisfied with advice from American-based image experts.
Let's now speak to Jack Stooks. Now, Jack is a former gardener, senior gardener, top man at Highgrove there. And did you know Harry, Jack?
Yes, yeah, I did. The Harry I knew was always amazing, really good, lovely to be around. I think everybody wanted to be around him, really. He was the sort of life and soul of the family. What we've got to remember is at the time, you know, we knew a book was coming out. We knew various things might come from that. We knew that there was problems with Meghan's family, and there was a lot going on at the time. I think things have, you know, sort of been brushed aside to an extent. Whether or not the book was a mistake, I mean, he might think it was a mistake. He might not think it was a mistake. What we tend to do is we judge him on just the fact that he wrote the book. What we don't think is, why did he write the book? You know, we don't ask the questions as to there was a reason behind him having to have his story known. And maybe, you know, he needed that. Maybe he felt he just needed people to know his side of the story. Hopefully, you know, that family can forgive. I mean, not forget, but be able to sort of move on in a different way.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer could arguably be the most greedy Prime Minister in history. A very big reaction to my big opinion on the message board, gbnews.com/your say. Craig, who's a GB News member, says, good evening, Mark. The Tories didn't pretend to be holier than God. Starmer did, you silly cow. I'm not sure who you're referring to there, Craig, but harsh language. Now, how about this? Shutty says, Mark, maybe it wasn't against the law what Starmer did, but what about declaring clothes as office supplies or whatever it was called? Connor says the question is not whether Starmer's gifts were breaking the rules, but whether he should have accepted them. Thank you for that. Oh, and by the way, this from Stephen, who says, Nasty Nick from EastEnders is a fine addition to the sofa. Stephen, that was a fine addition to our programme. Keep those messages coming. gbnews.com/your say. Next up, the big story. And the Reform UK Party conference in Birmingham concluded yesterday with an upbeat message from its leader, Nigel Farage.
The message, the word that sums it all up, is optimism. We believe we can do better. We believe this country can do better. We believe we can turn this country around. We know we have the silent majority with us. All we have to do is to inspire them to join us, to believe in us, to help us. If we can put out that message of optimism, and look at what we're up against. I mean, I didn't agree with Blair, but at least he said things can only get better. Starmer says things can only get worse.
So, as the Conservatives still battle to find a new leader, could Reform UK overtake the Tories as the main party of the right in this country? Let's get the views of Britain's best-known political double act, Neil and Christine Hamilton. Neil, what did you make of the atmosphere and tone of the Reform UK conference this week?
Well, I think Nigel was bang on the money, saying that what characterised the Reform conference was optimism, and they've got every reason to be optimistic, because they've got where they are today because of the numpties who ruined the country before the last general election, and they can go to the next stage because of the numpties that are continuing to ruin the country now under Labour. What we're seeing, actually, is the political class completely disintegrating around us, and what we need is a disruptive force like Reform and a disruptive leader like Farage to upend the entire apple cart so that the people themselves ultimately can take charge of their own destinies once again, and the grifters like Starmer and Rayner and Reeves and all the others can be booted out into the political wilderness, and we can take back our country, which is what Brexit was all about and which the political class has conspired to prevent happening in the last 8 years.
Christine, there's a concern on the right that Nigel Farage will cancel out the Tories, and therefore isn't the price of Reform UK's political revolution a decade of Labour in power?
Well, that may well be, but if anybody can cancel out the Tories, it's certainly Farage. I think a big mistake the Tories made in 2019 was when Farage stood aside all his candidates and allowed the Tories to sail in with that monumental majority. As I understand it, and he's not my best friend, there wasn't a word of appreciation, no acknowledgement, no nothing. The Tories just took it for granted, took it as their right, their due. Now, they could have put Farage in the Lords, for example, as a way of acknowledging that he has stood aside from the democratic elective process to help the Tories, which is what he did. Absolutely nothing. So I think he feels now that the gloves are off and let's go for it. And I think before we get to Labour at the next general election, I think the local elections, if Reform get their act together, if they take their lessons from the Lib Dems, who know exactly about cracked pavement politics, start working for the bottom upwards, they could easily find themselves taking control of councils all over the country. And the Tories are in a pincer movement. I mean, funnily enough, today we've had lunch with some councillors, let's just say that, and they realise that they are in this pincer movement between the Liberals and Reform. And if the Tories don't come out with a clear differentiation between them and the others, then why would anybody vote for them when they could either, according to their preference, go Lib Dem or Reform? Vote for the real thing. Why vote for the Tories who don't really know what they are at the moment?
Neil, you are ultimately a Conservative, whether it's a small C or a big C Conservative. You're on the right politically. Isn't the issue that there just aren't enough voters for both Reform UK and the Conservatives. This town ain't big enough for the both of them, and the only winner at the moment is Keir Starmer.
I think it's a great mistake to talk in terms of right and left in this debate. It's a case of a deracinated political class, or effectively a mono-party. I mean, what is the real difference between the current Labour Party and the Conservative Party on all the major policies of the day? Economic policy, the COVID response, which wrecked the public finances. Labour actually wanted to go even further than the Tories in wrecking the economy. On immigration, they're both completely useless. On ridiculous net zero policies that are impoverishing us all and are going to threaten to do far, far worse over the years to come. They're all absolutely identical in what they say. So I think the difference between Reform and other parties like UKIP that are, broadly speaking, saying the same thing as Reform is that they're providing a real alternative to what the political class has been saying. And today, the political class are really much more interested in protecting their own sort of seats on the gravy train than actually listening to the public at large. When you look at the current Conservative leadership contest, I mean, what is the real difference between any of the half dozen or so non-entities who the public could hardly name in an identity parade, even if they had their names written around their necks? And what's gone before? I mean, there is no real change in the Conservative Party. It's not possible. So, I mean, I do think that there's a great opportunity here for a party like Reform. 40% of the country didn't vote at the last election. The party, which has now got an overwhelming majority in the House of Commons, only got a third of that 60% who did vote. So they got the support of 20% of the people in this country who were entitled to vote. I mean, that is hardly an expression of support for the democratic process in the UK. And I think that we're in for a period of convulsion now in which anything can happen.
OK, well, that's a tantalising thought. Christine, some would argue that Reform UK is far right, that it's xenophobic, it's all about dog whistle politics, blaming all our woes on immigration and foreigners. But here's my question for you. What is the strategy? What is Nigel Farage's master plan? What is the end game?
Well, the end game, I mean, as I said earlier, I'm not his best friend. I don't see inside his head. But his end game is obviously to be Prime Minister. I mean, he's made that quite clear, and a lot of people will laugh and say, don't be ridiculous, you can't do that. Well, it would be 2 bans. But, I mean, stranger things have happened. And the thing about Reform is that people know what they stand for. And, oh, yes, some people will think they're far right. People think I'm far right, which is rubbish. They'll think they're xenophobic and racist. There are racists, by the way, in all political parties. No party has a monopoly on xenophobia or racism. So that one is a canard. But Nigel is clear and firm, and this is what he believes in. If you vote for him, if you support him, this is what you will get. And you can't really say that about either of the other parties at the moment. I mean, the Labour Party, the minute they get in, they're doing all the things they said they wouldn't do. So thanks.
Brilliant. Neil and Christine Hamilton, great to see you. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. Britain's most formidable and best-known political double act. Neil and Christine Hamilton now. Before we continue with the show, some very exciting news with a man that's had a well-deserved break. He's been cruising, but he cruises back to the GB News studio on Monday.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamonn Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ship ahoy! Captain Eamonn Holmes is back on Monday. Can't wait. Be great to see him again. Coming up with tonight's top pundits, following Jimmy Savile, Hugh Edwards and now Mohammed Al-Fayed. Why do we allow powerful men to get away with these terrible crimes? We'll debate that next.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid in amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day, so do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast, but another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally dry further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days, things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth. Available at gbnews.com.
Can Reform UK overtake the Conservatives between now and the next election? Well, this from Adrian. As always, Christine is spot on. Reform will be the main party in this country very soon. They'll start by taking many council seats, but we need the voting system changed if Reform are to be in government, but Labour and the Tories won't allow it. How about this? Neil, you are a legend, says Anne-Marie Sonko. I think that's a very bit of high praise, which is very, very good taste as well, and excellent judgment. Let me just quickly ask you on that, Neil, given that you've been established as a legend. Do you think Reform can overtake the Tories between now and 2029?
I think it's still up in the air. I thought Christine Hamilton, who I have to say, I always think is a very shrewd political analyst. I thought her point about how they do in the council elections will be very significant, because it will show whether there is enough of a bedrock support. Yeah. So it's not just the sort of activist wing, as it were, but will ordinary people turn out for them? That will be the scary thing for the Tories.
Lib Dems have always done very, very well in local elections, and they've built on that, and they've now known how to work the system, because they want proportional representation, and always have done. But without proportional representation, they've known how to make each vote count. So they've got 72. So Reform are going to have to go a long way to pass Lib Dems, never mind the Conservatives, and certainly they're not going to catch up to Labour.
Indeed, I think they have a good chance. I think they definitely get to be opposition, I would say. And I think Lib Dems, the charm, if you like, of Farage, and his personality. I'm an actor, right? He has great personality, and that comes across. And also, I think they strike at the heart of England. You know, you talk to the taxi drivers, you talk to the milkman, the postman. not everybody voted for Starmer, as we know. You know, the percentage of votes were really low, and yet he got in because of the situation of our voting system. So I just think
he got in.
they have a good chance.
People loathed the Tories and could see what damage they'd done over 40 years.
I think people were bored of the Tories as well, to be honest.
John, you famously were Nasty Nick. Some people think that Mr Farage is Nasty Nigel. Is that fair?
Nasty? No, I wouldn't say that, actually. No, I think he's pretty popular out there.
And do you not think, briefly though, John, that the Conservatives and Reform cancel each other out? The only winner here is Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, that's unfortunate, isn't it? Personally, I didn't vote for either of the major parties.
You didn't vote for any of the main parties?
No. I just went by the leaflets through my door, and I was looking at all their... And neither of the major parties appealed to me. Yeah. You know, and I voted Green. Which I've never done before.
There you go.
Because their leaflet said the things that I cared about.
You must have had a drink. OK, now he's back on the bottle.
There you go, I've confessed.
Now, the former Harrods owner, Mohammed Al-Fayed, has been described as a monster by lawyers representing ex-Harrods employees who said they were victims of rape and sexual assault. Barrister Dean Armstrong, KC, representing all of Fayed's accusers, described him as presiding over a vast web of abuse and saying, "I've had many years of practice. I have never seen a case as horrific as this." It's thought that ultimately the number of victims could run into the hundreds. So, following Jimmy Savile, Hugh Edwards and Mohammed Al-Fayed, why do we allow powerful men to get away with these terrible crimes? Nina Mishkov.
Well, the thing is, because they can. If you have as much money as Al-Fayed had and power, you can surround yourself by people who will be your yes men, who will then enable you to act in the way you want to. I mean, this doesn't, it obviously works in a different way with Savile. I mean, that was nothing to do with money. That was to do with celebrity and fame, and people think, people kind of fall over themselves towards celebrity. And so, and because he tried to he did very convincingly give off these vibes that he was, doing charity work in Stoke Mandeville. Nobody could possibly have begun to imagine how horrific the things he actually did at Stoke Mandeville were. So people are seduced by celebrity. They're also seduced by the aura of power and money. And I watched that documentary on Al-Fayed, and it was utterly horrifying. I was practically weeping at times, those poor girls. And the thing is, because it's a kind of secret shame, women don't easily talk about it. It's a secret shame. And women actually start to blame themselves. Yeah. They think, did I do something to lead him on? Is it me? Should I have worn my skirt that short? Yeah. Should I have had those blonde highlights, or my top too low, or whatever? So women think sometimes that it's their fault. And he managed to sort of just game the whole system.
Plus, he was their boss as well, and they needed that job. They needed that income.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with people like Fayed, fear, like a mafia boss, if you like, Yes. You would tell anybody, you'd be bad for you. I know where you. I know where your family live.
Like the way you slipped into a bit of old Don Corleone. You can take the actor out of the man.
Actor.
But I think a lot of, and like Savile too as well. He apparently, when people wondered how on earth he got away with it, they said that he threatened them because he knew some people in Northern Ireland. I won't mention who, but and he said, I have friends in Northern Ireland, and they will deal with you if you say a word about this. So fear. I'm not sure about Hugh Edwards, but he might have used fear.
It's not on that scale.
We don't know. But a lot of these assholes, if you want to call them that,
yes, you can.
It's fear that they've used to get away with it for so long.
Fear definitely. Neil, briefly, if you can, I fear that lessons won't be learnt from this.
I think that's true. I thought it was a very good analysis by Nina. The truth of the matter is, you look at people like Weinstein, he was a similar one. When people have vast money and blatantly have mass power, which is what Al-Fayed did. You know, he was known as the pharaoh of the West End, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You know, and he would stride around, and he was always followed by an entourage, and he always had huge phalanx of bodyguards.
Henchmen.
And it was...
Yeah.
And his son was dating Princess Diana.
Yes, I think his misdemeanour started... Not misdemeanour, his crime started long before that.
That was a few months, that dreadful summer. But I just wanted to say that also one thing is, and things have changed since Me Too, because women and girls are being brought up differently now to stand up to men. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, women are brought up to be submissive, pretty nice, don't make a fuss.
Too right. If you are being bullied or abused by a boss or a colleague, do speak out. Coming up, my Mark Meets guest is broadcasting legend Fred Dinenage, MBE. We'll talk about his 6 decades in front of a microphone, his reaction to the Hugh Edwards scandal, and what does he think of GB News? Find out next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Janis Joplin shot to fame in 1967, but after releasing 3 albums, she was dead 3 years later at the age of 27, having overdosed on heroin.
Yes, very, very brief life, but towering influence. People like Pink in the modern day have said that she is the influence. But she was around so briefly, I guess, burned very brightly and a very troubled soul. And what we've got is A Night with Janis Joplin, the musical. And I think a lot of the problems, it's been getting very mixed reviews, and I think the problem is with this subtitle, the musical. That does it no justice at all.
Really?
It's staggering, stunning in an audience. So what we have is A Night With. It's as if she's in concert. She's sitting on the stage, she's swinging from a bottle, and she's singing and giving us little memories, thoughts on life.
I think I see where you're going, because some critics have said it's a fantastic individual performance that sits in an empty vessel of a show.
Yeah.
And you're saying that that's because the expectations of what the show is have been wrong.
Yes, I agree. And I do think that it's obviously a very loving show. There's very little reference to drugs. There's a bit of a throwaway comment. So we don't really look at the demons. What we do is we explore womanhood very powerfully, but also the blues.
How long do we have to see this?
This one it's on until September the 28th. It's on at the Peacock, which is just down by Aldwych in London.
Quite a small auditorium, actually.
No, it's a big auditorium. So the Peacock is it's a bit of a barn of a room. And again, I would say this show might be better in a slightly smaller venue, but I cannot recommend the performances highly enough.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamonn Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It might take a 10. Woke Oscar-winning actress Dame Emma Thompson and BBC Match of the Day star Gary Lineker get the Take It 10 treatment. But first, this. Yes, indeed, I'm delighted to welcome the iconic and brilliant star of regional television, Fred Dinenage, MBE. It's time now for Mark Meets, and this evening, one of the best-known and most enduringly popular broadcasters in the country, Fred Dinenage, whose television career has spanned nearly 6 decades, including the long-running children's programme How and ITV's regional programming in the south of England. And he's as busy as ever as one of the main stars of the Sky Crime TV channel. Plus, he's on a theatre tour with his show about the notorious Kray twins, Ronnie, Reggie and me. Fred Dinenage, MBE, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for asking me. It's an absolute honour to be on GB News. It really is.
Thanks, Fred. How did you get your first big break?
Through, amazingly enough, a wonderful lady called Anne Nightingale, who later became Annie Nightingale, I think the longest-serving Radio 1 DJ of them all. A wonderful lady who was a friend of mine in Brighton, where I was working on the Brighton Evening Argus. She came to me one day and said, there's a producer at Southern TV in Southampton looking for a young presenter. And she said, I've given him your name. It was the biggest break I ever had. And so I went on 3 Go Round, a kids magazine programme. It was me and 2 girls, 2 of the earliest presenters. One was called Diane Keane, who became a very successful actress. Another was called Britt Allcroft, who went on to get the rights to Thomas the Tank Engine and is now a multi-millionairess, I believe, and living in Los Angeles. So of the 3 of us, you are now talking to the one who didn't quite make it.
Was there anything in your early years that was a clue to your future career?
Yes, I had a trial when I was about 16 or 17. I had a football trial with Aston Villa, which I thought that was going to be the future. I was a talented left back, so I thought. In the very first minute of the game, the ball came across the goal. The watching manager was Joe Mercer, who was the manager of Aston Villa. I should have let it go out. It was for a goal kick. I didn't. I tried to do a Pele-style overhead kick. The ball flew off my boot into my own net. And that was the end of my football career. Many years later, I interviewed Joe Mercer. I said, Joe, you could have signed the finest left back in English football. I don't think so, son. He said, I think you've done better where you are. He was probably right.
So tell me about that book, Ronnie, Reggie and Me.
Well, that was the book I originally wrote. It's called Our Story, which is the story of the Kray twins, Reg and Ron Kray. And then a few months ago, a guy called Alex Dyke, who's actually a presenter on your particular radio TV station, GB News, Alex came up with this idea about let's do a show. And so we're actually on tour talking about Reggie, Ronnie and me. Lots of really good videos in it as well, all sorts of videos. And it seems to have gone down particularly well. And all the details, and I've got to get this plug in, Mark, if that's okay, facebook.com/Ronnie, Reggie and me. And all the details of our tour are on there. And we start touring again next month. But so far, so good. There is this incredible fascination with the Kray twins all these years after they rule the streets of East London. It is quite extraordinary. I get students who are doing criminology at university emailing me, asking for information about the Kray twins, and they weren't even alive when the Kray twins were sort of ruling the East End of London. It's quite extraordinary how this myth, this legend, lingers on.
Is there a danger of glorifying or romanticising the Krays, given their violent crimes?
Well, what we do is we make it very clear from the top, and Alex introduces the programme. I do all the chatter in between. But we make it very clear from the top of the show, we are not glamorising or glorifying the Kray twins in any way. There's no messing about on that particular score. We let people judge for themselves, you know, just how bad or how good the Kray twins were, whether they actually deserve the incredibly long sentences they got. So we really don't try and glamorise or glorify at all. We just tell the story of the Kray twins with a lot of videos, as it were, warts and all, and let people decide for themselves about the Kray twins. And it's extraordinary, the people in the various audiences we've had who've got links, even family links, to the Kray twins. It's been a real experience.
Now, Fred, many of your TV shows were networked across the country, but you are an icon of regional broadcasting. Do you lament its gradual demise?
Yes, I do, because regional television, I think, is incredibly important. And the kind of the friendship that exists between regional television presenters and the audience is quite remarkable. It really is. And people will stop you in the street and have a conversation as if you're old friends. And to me, of course, they always have been old friends. Well, I love it when people come up to me and say, "Ow," and all things like that. Yes, regional TV, regional radio, of course, as well, is incredibly important, and sad to see it not doing so well anymore.
Now, Fred, you were a news anchor for almost 4 decades, so I've got to ask you, what was your reaction when Hugh Edwards was convicted of his appalling crimes?
Well, that was really shocking because, like many people, for many years, I've been a huge admirer of Hugh Edwards. It's funny, you know, my wife and I went to the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow some years ago, and we were sat in the stand there. I paid for it myself. It wasn't a freebie ticket. Quite clear. We sat in the stand, and I looked down, the BBC were covering it, and there was Hugh Edwards. And I remember thinking, God, really, you know, I'd love to be him, because he was such a great broadcaster. And so sad, isn't it, when your idols disappear or let you down in front of your eyes? That really was a great shock, and I'm really sad about it.
You retired as a news anchor in December 2021. How hard was it for you to hang up your microphone?
Oh, gosh, it was incredibly hard, because I've been fronting the ITV regional show in the south and southeast of England and the Thames Valley for nearly 40 years. So it was really, really hard. And I missed it terribly, but I was lucky because, you know, this tour came along. I still do a lot of crime programs for the Sky Crime Channel. I'm lucky enough because Saga, the cruise line, they let me go on their river cruises and so on. And I talk about the Cray twins and also 50 or 60 years of bloopers in TV. So I have been lucky that you know, other things have come along, but. Yes, when I did retire, I really did miss it, because it had been such a very, very happy time.
Fred, what do you make of the changing media landscape with streaming and the emergence of channels like GB News?
Well, I think, I mean, I'll be honest with you, and this is the absolute truth. I watch a lot of GB News, and I think it's very impressive. And I think your presenters, yourself included, are absolutely first class. All the streaming and all that stuff, to be quite honest, I don't really understand, but I'm surrounded by people, luckily, who do. But GB News, I am, and this is not nonsense, I am a watcher, I am a follower. I think you're doing a great job.
Fred, that's very high praise coming from you. Thank you so much. Well, I'm delighted to say that Fred Dinenage has far from retired and is currently embarked on a nationwide theatre tour of his fascinating show about the craze, Ronnie, Reggie and Me. It's winning rave reviews, and for tickets, head to facebook.com/Ronnie, Reggie and Me. There you go. What a brilliant broadcaster. A treat to have Fred Dinenage on the show. Well, we've got a very busy hour to come, let me tell you. Tomorrow's papers and an all-star panel. We've got Nina Mishkov, Neil Wallace and a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight. Ex-EastEnders actor John Altman. That's right, Nasty Nick himself. So a busy hour to come. We've got tomorrow's papers hot off the press. And in my take at 10... woke Oscar-winning actress Dame Emma Thompson and BBC Match of the Day star Gary Lineker have signed an insane open letter calling for an end to fossil fuels. The gap between the North London Champagne socialist elite and the rest of the country has never been wider. Here's the issue. Ordinary Brits cannot afford the luxury views of these millionaire hypocrites. So whether it's net zero or any of these other extreme policies, the bottom line is that Dame Emma and Gary Lineker are insulated from the consequences of their woke virtue signalling pronouncements. Also, we're going to talk about US politics. Donald Trump fights back. He's got momentum. Why is he so willing to do all the US talk shows, all the podcasts, long form facing scrutiny and, of course, continuing with those rallies? Meanwhile, Kamala Harris, like her boss, Joe Biden, in hiding. We'll get reaction from the Queen of US royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. But Dame Emma and Gary Lineker will be dealt with next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid in amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day, so do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast, but another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally drier further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days, things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next Great British Giveaway winner with a whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the winning phone call for that.
£30,000 cash? Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Yes, you see, that is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon. Oh my God, this is amazing.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, woke Oscar-winning actress Dame Emma Thompson and BBC Match of the Day star Gary Lineker have signed an insane open letter calling for an end to fossil fuels. The gap between the North London Champagne socialist elite and the rest of the country has never been wider. Ordinary Brits cannot afford the luxury views of these millionaire hypocrites. So, Dame Emma and Gary Lineker will be getting the Take at 10 treatment in just 2 minutes' time. Also tonight, Princess Kate goes back to work and Meghan abandons Harry. Meanwhile, Donald Trump back in pole position after yet another attempt on his life will get reaction. Live from the States and the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And tonight's top pundits, writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, former EastEnders star John Altman and ex-newspaper editor Neil Wallace. Let me tell you, they're coming in hot tonight. Plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages, lots to get through. Dame Emma Thompson, Gary Lineker, wild eco-hypocrisy. That's my take at 10, straight after the news headlines and Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. The top stories. Sir Keir Starmer has promised to protect public services from extreme cuts as he made a bid to move on from rows over donations and strife at Number 10 after arriving at the Labour Party conference earlier today. While speaking to the Sunday Mirror newspaper on the eve of the conference, the Prime Minister said his government was not going down the road of austerity like that pursued by David Cameron's administration. He's intent on shifting that attention away from rows over those donations and the internal fighting at Number 10. Upon arrival, Sir Keir Starmer said the conference would show how Labour are fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country.
Just started. Today we're going to set out, and over the next coming days, how we're fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country. So enjoy conference. Very, very good to be here.
And today was day 2 of the Reform Conference in Birmingham, with party leader Nigel Farage giving his farewell address earlier this afternoon. Last night, Mr Farage told supporters he believes Reform can win the next general election, given the number of people that agree with their principles, he said. He's also explained what drove him to stand as Clacton's MP once the election was called earlier this year.
At almost every level, we'd been betrayed. And then I thought about what was happening on our streets. And frankly, I thought to myself, Britain is broken. And then I couldn't help it. But if Britain is broken, then logically, Britain needs reform.
A snap poll opened today as members of the National Education Union vote on pay and funding. Teachers and education professionals in the UK will have until the 30th of this month to either accept or reject the government's offer of a 5.5% pay rise. This comes after the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, agreed in full to follow the recommendations of the School Teachers Review Body. And the Met Office has issued a further weather warning with heavy rain and thunderstorms forecast for the rest of the weekend. The alert will remain in place throughout the day, covering Wales, the Midlands, the southwest and parts of the southeast. The forecaster has warned that people should expect damage to buildings as a result of lightning strikes, disruption to public transport and also flooding, all within the affected areas. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Donald Trump bounces back, plus Princess Catherine returns to work. Lots to get through, a busy hour. First, my take at 10. The North London champagne socialist elite strike again. BBC Match of the Day star Gary Lineker and Oscar-winning actress Dame Emma Thompson and a bunch of other so-called celebrities that I've never heard of have signed an open letter calling for the immediate phasing out of fossil fuels. In an ideal world, we'd be phasing out these old showbiz fossils, whose hot air is probably the main cause of global warming. Isn't it ironic that the likes of fried potato salesman Gary Lineker and Oscar-winning whinger Emma Thompson, who are both literally worth tens of millions of pounds each, are willing to put their names to a policy which will see the rest of us made even poorer? The idea of transitioning away from fossil fuels in the short to medium term is utter insanity and economic suicide. Factories would grind to a halt, as they already have done in Germany, thanks to green policies. The cost of fuel for cars, homes and businesses would skyrocket. Most goods would become infinitely more expensive. Inflation would return with a vengeance, and we'd likely be reliant on the likes of Russia and Saudi Arabia just to keep the lights on. But Dame Emma, for example, won't have to worry about the cost of her eco-ideology. She can just make another instalment of Nanny McPhee. And Gary Lineker can just do some more TV adverts for unhealthy junk food snacks, further worsening the obesity crisis, particularly among children. But these are the good people, folks. Do keep up. The eye-watering double standards of these stars knows no limit. Don't forget, it was just a few months ago when private jet-dwelling racing car driver Lewis Hamilton backed the militant eco-group Just Stop Oil. You couldn't make it up. Meanwhile, Gary Lineker, who dismissively called October the 7th the Hamas thing, preaches the eco-message whilst broadcasting from the World Cup in the Middle East, in vast air-conditioned stadia in the desert. Now, Gary says, we're all hypocrites. No, Gary, you're a hypocrite. And Dame Emma's hypocrisy is uglier than the aforementioned alter ego Nanny McPhee. She said on a recent climate change march, we cannot take out any more oil from the ground. Except this is a woman who cavorted on a vast gas-guzzling 350-foot mega yacht owned by billionaire media tycoon Barry Diller, co-founder of the US conservative news channel Fox News, whose right-wing output I've got no doubt Dame Emma detests. But what she didn't detest is the chilled champagne and caviar served up on this opulent vessel, one which carries 2 enormous diesel engines plus fossil fuel-powered generators, presumably to put bubbles in the jacuzzi. Dame Emma first reportedly flew first class back in the day from the US to support a Just Stop Oil campaign, even though the first-class BA flight from New York to London costs £18,000 and generates nearly 2 tons of carbon dioxide for each passenger in the elite cabin. According to the paper, onlookers claimed that Dame Emma drank Laurent Perrier champagne and dined on beef carpaccio, even though she has also previously called on us to eat less meat in order to save the planet. I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. You can't sit on board a £200 million super yacht and jet around the world whilst telling us, the great unwashed, that we've got to take fewer flights, eat less meat and spend 20 grand on a new boiler. Now, I'm all for cleaning up the planet and reducing our emissions. Britain is a world leader in green tech and there are jobs in it. Transitioning to green future will reduce pollution and offers many opportunities alongside a smart mix of nuclear and, yes, fossil fuels. But this transition has to be conducted with 3 things in mind: the health and viability of the economy, policies must be rooted in evidence-based science, and these changes cannot happen without the will and support of the people. And that's not what we've got now. With the insanity of Ed Miliband banning perfectly viable oil and gas exploration in the North Sea, bankrolling green projects because the private sector have run a mile, and betting the house on flaky renewables. Emma Thompson and Gary Lineker can afford that, but you and I can't. It's funny because Emma Thompson's films, from which she has accrued millions, are very popular in China. So as a big celebrity in China, why doesn't Dame Emma hop on a first-class BA flight to Beijing and convey her concerns to President Xi? She could march on Tiananmen Square. Dame Emma loves a march. She can ask him whether China, by far the world's biggest polluter, are doing net zero themselves. The answer may surprise her. She'll be quite uncharacteristically lost for words. This eco-letter, signed by a bunch of rich, woke celebrities, is dangerous, it's insane, it's unhinged, and it's a joke. Let's hope it gets lost in the post. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. But first, tonight's top pundits, writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, former EastEnders star John Altman, and ex-newspaper editor and media consultant Neil Wallace. Great to see all three of you. There you go. Well, listen, I've got to start with the most famous actor in the room tonight. It's John Altman. Your reaction to the comments of Dame Emma and Net Zero?
Well, they both admitted to hypocrisy, haven't they?
But does that get them off the hook?
Well, perhaps their hearts are in the right place, but they're not actually doing as they say, are they? They're not.
I mean, do you think... What's your view about actors and celebrities pronouncing on political issues of the day?
Well, you're sitting here doing it now.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, would you have done that when you were starring in EastEnders? Would you have been on Twitter commenting on this, that, and the other?
Probably. Sometimes, yeah. I feel quite strongly about a lot of things, actually. And, yeah...
Because you've got strong views on what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, haven't you?
Yeah, very, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was thinking, why like Starmer, for example, should stop sending arms out there, because, I mean, the figures are horrific. I mean, over 41,000.
It's carnage what's happening out there.
Yeah.
With regard...
So I do speak out on that.
Yeah.
Because I've actually followed it for many, many years, and I knew that there would have been troubles there for the last 50 years, and the British were responsible for it in the first place.
Well, sure, and I've got no doubt we'll turn to the Middle East when the papers come in at 10:30, and as you say, it's a big subject. But my issue with Net Zero is I think we need to clean up the planet, but rich celebrities telling us to get a new boiler and stop eating meat is a bit rich.
Yeah, I think so, because they're not carrying out they're not practicing what they preach, are they, really? So,
yeah, and it's not the problem,
I think you're being very unkind to Emma, and you always are unkind to Emma. She's a woman who can be annoying at times because she is so talented.
Well, she's probably your neighbour in Hampstead, isn't she?
No, she's not my neighbour in Hampstead. She's not my neighbour in Hampstead. But the thing is, Emma has her heart in the right place. And the letter that they've signed is not saying everybody's got to have a new boiler at 20 grand. It's not saying this. It's just saying it's asking the United Nations Summit to have an agreement to start transitioning towards...
Which means transitioning towards poverty, doesn't it, for any nation that adopts it?
It doesn't say at what speed. It doesn't say by 2030 and bankrupt us all.
So what's the point of it, then?
It is just making their feelings felt to make sure the United Nations has this in the agreement that or the statement they make at the end of this particular summit, which takes place on September 22nd, 23rd. So it's actually it's a bunch of parents who are talking about this on behalf of their children.
Wow.
Mo Farah's another one who signed it, so he's not a no-hoper rich celebrity.
I heard he'd done a runner, but Neil, what's your view on this? Because I just think that rich celebrities lecturing us on net zero is too much.
Yeah. So, who appointed this group who decided to go looking for publicity-hungry celebrities to actually put their names to something? Frankly, they won't make the slightest bit of difference to... pardon me, to a group of politicians at the UN. You know, who are these people? Who asked them? Early this year, I think I've told you this before, I went on a train trip across China. Yeah. If you go on a train trip across China, every half hour, 40 minutes or so, you will see a power station pumping out gases into the air. What I would be much, much more impressed by would be if those people, they're all rich enough, who have signed this petition, all these celebrities, got together, and as you mentioned, suggested in your Take at 10, maybe they should go to Beijing, maybe they should go to Tiananmen Square, maybe they should stage a demonstration there, calling on the Chinese to stop the amount of pollution they do, the world's biggest polluter. You know what? They would last 2 minutes. They'll never think about doing it. But what they will do is support action here when, in fact, the real truth is that Britain has been a world leader in reducing the amount of carbon emissions in this country.
OK, briefly, Nina, last word.
Well, I think it's terribly unfair to pick them out in this way. They are doing this out of the goodness of the goodness of the. No,
they're signalling their virtue, aren't they?
No, it's
they're
not.
They
genuinely are concerned that otherwise they wouldn't do it.
But they are briefly, they're economically insulated from the consequences of their words.
They are economically.
They can afford net zero, and my viewers and listeners can't.
Do you take flights?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you take flights? Do you take flights? You said you went on a train, Jay, but did you?
Yes, but I do
flights?
because I love me a fossil fuel.
Well, fine, but that's...
Do I take first class £18,000 flights across
probably
the Atlantic
probably paid for by the thing. Look, these are people who genuinely care, and if their names can make a slightest bit of difference to help the planet, then good on them.
Russia and America belching fossil fuels like China, doing the same thing. Nobody seems to stop them. Huge businesses. Multi-billion.
Is it a mockery that we're going to bankrupt ourselves for net zero here whilst this goes on elsewhere?
Absolutely.
We're not necessarily going to bankrupt ourselves. We are not going to bankrupt ourselves.
We will.
If China aren't doing net zero,
must be an alternative, surely. Yeah?
Pardon?
An alternative.
Yeah, I'm going for smart net
nuclear
zero.
power.
And a bit of nuclear would be very nice. So listen, folks, that's what I think is an energy mix. But look, we'll return to this with the papers at 10:30. I think you'll agree that feelings are running high on this one. But next up, Princess Kate goes back to work and Meghan abandons Harry. Why? Plus, Donald Trump back in pole position after yet another attempt on his life. A reaction from the Queen of US Showbiz Royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, next.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A furious online debate has been sparked after, well, let's just say a rather large man, I mean, he really was big, was snapped trying to fit into his seat on the plane.
It's led to some to ask whether obese passengers should have to pay for extra plane seats so they don't inconvenience others.
Some say, though, that's cruel. So, should plus-size passengers pay extra for plane seats? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, who's in Stratford-upon-Avon, and the director of All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock, who's in beautiful Harrogate. Good to see you both this morning. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, we've had this debate before with Steve and I, to be fair, and I think it's one of those things where planes are just not fit for purpose anymore. So people's bodies have been growing over the years. We know this, the obesity rates are increasing, etc. But what's happening to planes is the seats are decreasing in size. So they're just not fit for purpose and not fit for the population. So I think it's just one of these things where we need to be more empathetic to people, that they're trying to fit into an environment that isn't shaped for them at all. So I think we do need to kind of say, well, what's right here? Is it the person not being able to fit in the seat, or is it the seat not being fit for purpose for the person? And I think we need to really, look at things from that perspective as well. Instead of thinking the person's doing something wrong, how about the environment might be doing something wrong?
Steve?
It's not about blaming, but the message you can't put out, in my opinion, is that it's okay to be obese and don't worry about it. You see, what I'm saying here is free plane seats. If you're offering free plane seats, an extra seat, that's going to normalise obesity.
GB News, the People's Channel. This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamonn Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Papers at 10:30, but first, US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, good to see you, and very good to see Princess Catherine back at work.
Yeah, that's right. There are some headlines. Kate goes back to work. I think they're a little bit of an exaggeration. We need to manage our expectations. The Princess of Wales felt up to attending an early years meeting at Windsor Castle. No further details of the meeting were recorded in the court circular, but we know that Catherine is incredibly passionate about early childhood development. So this is something that's going to get her up and out the door. Obviously, we're excited to see her in the future, but I think you would agree with me that we are much more eager for her to be and feel 100%.
Most definitely her recovery is paramount. Meanwhile, her husband, William, the Prince of Wales, makes an important royal appointment, Kinsey.
Yeah, that's right. Prince William revealed his new equerry. His name is Squadron Leader Mike Reynolds, who is a trained helicopter pilot, and royal fans, they're thrilled that Prince William and Mr. Reynolds share a matching beard. Priorities, Mark Dolan. Mr. Reynolds' position will include organizing and assisting at public engagements, arranging official diaries, and he's going to collaborate with approximately 6 other assistants working in the royal household at any given time. But this is, I feel like Prince William might find a friend in him, so that's good news.
Most definitely. Meanwhile, Prince Harry went to a Kevin Costner charity. His wife was absent. What's going on?
You know, Mark, this was a rare moment where Prince Harry was presenting an award instead of accepting one. He presented an award to Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office helicopter pilot Lauren Courtney at Kevin Costner's charity event on Friday night. This is the annual 1-805 Lives Fall Charity Concert that takes place on Kevin Costner's beachfront estate to benefit first responders in Santa Barbara County. Last year, there was an awkward moment where Meghan tried to take the microphone from someone. This moment went viral. I actually think we talked about it on your show. The person didn't want to give Meghan the microphone, so there was this kind of tug of war that went viral online. This year, Meghan didn't show up. She stayed home. And according to the Mirror, one of their sources said perhaps she was sick.
There you go. We can but speculate, can't we? Meanwhile, Prince Andrew's reputation once again dragged through the mud. Another royal drama.
Have you watched this yet, Mark? Have you watched it?
No, I've seen a couple of clips and they look pretty awkward.
Oh, you have, Mark, this is so your humor. You have to watch A Very Royal Scandal on Amazon. It's Amazon Video. It's a 3-part series. I've never seen Michael Sheen as Prince Andrew is brilliant, but boy, does he make Prince Andrew a crispy character. I mean, within the first minute, I laughed out loud at his portrayal. You have to watch it. It is very well done. It is damaging to the royal family, but you have to sit back and understand that this is television. This is not a documentary. Similar to The Crown, we're watching things that are exaggerated for entertainment purposes.
Most definitely. Other streaming services are available. How damaging are these dramas to the reputation of the royal family?
I think that they benefit them in some way, too. I think that they are damaging, but at the same point, it keeps them very relevant in pop culture. It keeps people engaged. Now people are much more aware of Prince Andrew and Fergie, and they're going to be watching them in real life, trying to determine how closely those characters are to them. So I think it hurts and it helps at the same time.
Let's talk about the race for the White House. And Donald Trump has made himself very available, hasn't he? So available that he's suffered an attempted assassination on 2 separate occasions. He's done long-form podcasts. Also, he's appeared on a comedy show this week, the Greg Gutfeld Show on Fox News. So Trump is making himself very available. Kamala Harris, not so much.
You know, you say that, but Kamala did sit down with Oprah Winfrey this week. She did sit down. It was a beautiful smokescreen and parade of celebrities like Meryl Streep, who once called Harvey Weinstein God. You know, you talk about all the powerful men getting away with what they got away with. You were talking about that during the last hour. And here's Harvey Weinstein and his friend Meryl Streep. You know, all of these people and these celebrities are endorsing an individual that has been lying to the American public about the state of Biden's health for years. And, you know, I've said to you before, I'm not excited about anyone, but I don't believe that Kamala is even remotely qualified for this position. President Trump does look weak by refusing to do another debate with Kamala, but I think he is trying to make up for it in giving access to all of these different individuals. And he's trying to hit different demographics by talking to podcasters and going on cable news.
Well, that's right. I mean, that interview with Kamala was a very soft one for Kamala Harris. Trump has done everything. He's done the Lex Friedman podcast. He's been on, what was it, this recent weekend podcast as well. And he's been on Gutfeld, which is a big sort of US comedy show on Fox News. Let's take a listen to Trump's appearance this week on that show.
But I loved the camaraderie. I had a lot of great friends from high school.
Yeah.
You know, you don't see him often, but one came up to my office the other day. He was a great-looking guy. Women loved him, most beautiful-looking guy you've ever seen. And I hadn't seen him in many years. And I said to the people in the office, the women especially, wait till you see this guy, how he looks. He was a football player. He was a great football player, actually. But he had everything. And the women loved him. And he walked into my office, and I said, oh. It was not a pretty sight. Man, did he take a beating.
I mean, the guy has entertainment value. He's got charm in spades, hasn't he?
Absolutely. He's absolutely hilarious. You know, but I do think that he's very charming. And Kamala is not being held accountable. I mean, just on Friday, President Biden held a cabinet meeting for the first time in almost a year and immediately handed the floor to his wife, Jill Biden. And critics are arguing that is proof that Jill's been running the country this whole time.
Wow.
So, you know, why are people not asking Kamala what's going on right now and what has been going on and why were you so deceptive over the last few years?
Most definitely. Couldn't agree more. You're not deceptive. You're not elusive like Kamala Harris. We'll see you in a week's time. Thank you to the brilliant Kinsey Schofield. Do check out her podcast and website, both of which are called To Die For Daily, which is full of royal exclusives. Speaking of exclusives, we've got the papers next with full pundit reactions. See you in 2.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid in amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day, so do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast, but another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally dry further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days, things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public. Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Let me tell you, it's coming up to 10:30, so it's time for this. Yes, hot off the press, courtesy of producer Bobby. We've got tomorrow's front pages. The Mail on Sunday, hours after Wardrobe Gate erupted, the Prime Minister and Sue Gray, his Chief of Staff, enjoy a Spurs freebie with lobbyists who backed hated breakaway football Super League and advises tax-avoiding tech giants. Sir Shameless is at it again, is the headline. Now, this is an exclusive by Glenn Owen. The freebie row engulfing Sir Keir Starmer deepened tonight as it was revealed that he shared lavish football hospitality with a powerful lobbyist who backed the controversial breakaway Super League. The Prime Minister and his embattled Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, enjoyed a corporate box at Tottenham Hotspur last Sunday, just hours after fresh Wardrobe Gate allegations emerged about clothes Sir Keir and his wife had taken from Labour donor Lord Ali. OK, well, listen about a bit more on this. Tickets were funded by Spurs, one of the 6 clubs which mounted the controversial 2021 attempt to leave the Premier League. Sunday Express now, Al-Fayed, world's worst sex predator. Also, embattled PM engulfed in rows over winter fuel cuts, freebies and infighting, is told by allies ditch toxic aid to end the chaos. Sir Keir Starmer is under pressure to ditch his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, whose feud with the Cabinet Secretary is at the heart of the turmoil, so the paper says. Sunday Times now, follow my example and get back to the office, Rachel Reeves said, amid work-from-home row. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, believes that employees benefit from being in the office and lead by example by going in 5 days a week, despite Labour's commitment to more flexible working. There seems to be a disagreement there between the Chancellor and Jonathan Reynolds, the Business Secretary, who promised last week to end the culture of presenteeism in workplace, in which people turn up just for the sake of it. Bit like Neil Wallace tonight. Rayner in rule breach over donor holiday. Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, appears to have breached parliamentary rules by failing to declare that a friend joined her on a personal holiday funded by the now notorious Lord Ali. Al-Fayed escaped charges twice over sex abuse is the other story. Meanwhile, The Sun on Sunday, Strictly bounces back with Zara. Bully row, Zara McDermott returned to Strictly tonight, weeks after pro-partner Graziano Di Prima was axed for kicking her. Daily Star Sunday, out of this world exclusive, close encounters of the fur kind. 1 in 5 would save pet instead of mother-in-law after alien invasion. Let me tell you, my mother-in-law's a very nice lady, and I'd save her over a pussy any day. OK, let's get reaction now to the front pages with my brilliant pundits this evening. We've got writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, who doesn't pull her punches. Boxing's over, by the way. Who won? I'll find out in a second. We've also got former EastEnders star John Altman and ex-newspaper editor and media consultant Neil Wallace. More bad headlines, Neil, for the Prime Minister. Sir Shameless is at it again, this time in a private box at Tottenham.
This is his nightmare. This continual barrage of publicity, this continual barrage of endless freeloading is going to hurt. I cannot believe, I think I said earlier, I cannot believe I have never seen a government implode so quickly in a reign. And as several of the other papers go on to point out, he's going to need to get a grip on this because the attacks are coming on many fronts. And what's more, what's always worse with a scandal like this is more revelations keep coming.
Yeah.
And that's because there are so many revelations to come. They're not recycling the same old story. More and more stories come out. You mentioned earlier that he had claimed or pocketed jaunts worth something like 100,000. It's actually £118,000. This is not a poor man. Why is he raking something like that in over a 5-year period? It's just wrong.
Does it tell us anything about Starmer's character?
I think it does. I think it betrays the fact that he's a man who's deeply, deeply interested in his own interests. You pointed out earlier about how he negotiated a one-off pension deal that no one else in the public sector has got. He negotiated it for himself, and it's worth absolutely many, many, many thousands. And you know, it sort of sends a message. And don't forget, we're talking about a man who 5 years ago was the staunchest supporter of Jeremy Corbyn before the previous election. He was a fanatical pro-Corbynite.
No, he was not. He was not a fanatical pro-Corbynite.
He said, Jeremy's my friend and I wanted to be Prime Minister.
Everybody says... There's no point of denying the sun rises and the moon sets,
He knew that the Labour Party needed to change to make it electable.
So he didn't believe in anything? He didn't believe in anything before? Or doesn't believe in anything now?
Which is it? Party. He did not believe in Corbyn.
Which did he believe in?
OK, let Nina finish.
He believed in the Labour Party, and you cannot change things from the outside. You have to be on the inside to change. People have said, you know, he was a lawyer, he's not a politician. He's one of the wiliest politicians there are.
Wily?
He is a very... Look, I don't vote for the man, so I'm not his apologist, but I'm saying that in the years since he's been leader, he has seen off the left, Jeremy Corbyn, the left wing of the Labour Party. They are put to one side, and he's got himself elected with the biggest majority. They are still there, and he's still dealing with them. But the thing is, he has brought them from unelectable election disaster in 2019 to winning with them one of the biggest
Nina's
majorities.
point is that Starmer had a plan, and it's working. He's now Prime Minister.
What, so that he cynically decided to support and help the extreme left of the Labour Party?
No, not...
Well, he's now Prime Minister, isn't he?
Well, there is that, that's true.
So he did it,
but of
so
course,
he's become Prime Minister.
Sorry, Nina,
let Neil finish.
Could I finish the sentence? I know it's difficult for you.
Don't be patronising. Won't have it.
We'll have a group hug in a minute.
Most people, political observers, would argue that the Tories lost that election, that the vote that elected the Labour Party was a relatively small vote. Most people voted against the Tories, and I understand why.
Look at the result. Look at the result. The result is extraordinary. And the point being that in December 2019, if you had said to anybody, will the Labour Party come back from this and win the next election, they would have thought you were absolutely barking mad.
John, we're talking here about tickets to the football, right?
Yes.
Private boxes, glasses of champagne. We're talking about expensive spectacles, fancy suits and dresses. Isn't this quite trivial stuff? Does it really matter? Isn't this a bit of a storm in a teacup?
Well, as we said earlier...
Storm in a teacup.
Boris was at it, wasn't he? But I think there's at least seems to be a lot more on Mr Starmer's personal shopping list than meets the eye. And I feel, my instinct tells me, there's going to be more. And
yeah, I agree with that.
Does he have close contact? Will you find out for me with the arms dealers in this country?
Oh, come on.
Because that's why he won't stop.
No.
You're not... Well, wait a minute. I mean...
The arms being sent to Israel.
That
is disgraceful. I'll bet he's in cohorts of those people. You guarantee it. He knows all these businessmen and the arms dealers.
Wait. Let John make his point.
Your implication is that Keir Starmer is somehow financially involved with...
Not financially. buddies with the arms
and what do you
industry,
mean by buddies?
and therefore he doesn't want to upset them, and so he's not stopping.
Well, John, we've got no evidence to demonstrate
the export
that is
of millions of pounds worth of arms.
slander.
I'm sure the Prime Minister...
And they actually they've cancelled contracts about a week ago. So what you know? What's the problem?
But not enough.
That's right.
They cannot do that.
Cancelled several arms export licenses to Israel, and we've got no evidence that the Prime Minister has financial or indeed personal links to the arms industry.
No, we have no evidence.
You're entitled to your view, though, and I
never know,
you're worried
do you?
about it. What it does raise a question about, it's about the integrity and ethics of our new Prime Minister, doesn't it?
I think
who many people thought was going to be a new leaf for the country after 14 years of so-called Tory sleaze.
Yes.
Are you disappointed?
I am, and you know what? I'm a fan of Corbyn too. I bet he wouldn't have done all this.
You don't think Corbyn would have taken freebies?
No, he might have taken a couple, but I would say he's a much more humble man.
Can I say
humble and more a wiser man?
One of the reasons this is going
should have had a makeover.
One of the reasons it's going on is because the right-wing press, which when Labour got into power a couple of months ago, were suddenly out in the cold. Instead of being able to pull the strings like the Daily Mail and the Telegraph and the Express could do, which they have been doing very happily for 14 years, their noses were completely out of joint when Keir Starmer won this huge majority. So to be given a sliver of dirt of any kind, they are going to town.
Are you not shocked by the scale of Sir Keir Starmer's greed? £100,000 in freebies since 2019, the largest amount of any MP in Parliament.
Twice.
By some, double, but by some margin.
I am surprised.
Rishi Sunak not even in the top 10.
He doesn't need to take it. He's richer than King Charles.
But neither does Sir Keir, who is reportedly worth millions.
Than King Charles. Well, he's not rich.
He's a multi-millionaire, isn't he, Keir
he's
Starmer?
not. I can't imagine that he is.
Well, the current DPP is on £200,000 a year.
Yeah,
so
I
it would have been a
six-figure
salary.
But I cannot
His pension pot is about £1 million.
Yes, but I doubt very much if he's a millionaire. It's only when you only become millionaires when you leave politics. No, you only become millionaires when you leave politics. I mean, look at Tony Blair. He wasn't a millionaire. Tony Blair was a very,
he was a
very
barrister for decades. He's one of the country's top barristers.
I doubt he was a millionaire when he became. He was not a millionaire when he became party leader, or nor when he became prime minister.
I think that Nina is up a gum tree here.
I'm not
Keir
up a gum
Starmer
tree.
is patently a multi-millionaire.
No, he's not.
You're a former national newspaper editor, and you're very good at appraising how wealthy celebrities are. Keir Starmer's loaded.
Keir Starmer is certainly loaded now, and he's certainly a man who has very carefully cultivated his own wealth, as you saw with that deal that he did with the taxman that no one else has got.
But you cannot say that he's a millionaire. You have no
Is
idea.
he the greediest PM in history?
No, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson.
I think Starmer's beyond Johnson, actually.
No, come on.
Boris bought a few pots of paint and some wallpaper.
You know what?
Hold fire.
Hold fire. I think we're going to have to... James, we're going to actually take a break, and we're going to come back to this because my brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight, our top pundit, John Altman, has just said that Keir Starmer is worse than Boris Johnson and greedier. So we'll debate that next, plus a shocking headline in tomorrow's, let me just get it, Sunday Telegraph. Terror suspects waltz in on small boats, says Robert Jenrick, Tory hopeful. Are the boats a threat to national security? We'll debate that, plus whether Keir Starmer is worse than Boris Johnson when it comes to sleaze. See you in 2.
Freebies.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
With her novels Persuasion and Northanger Abbey both set in Bath, the city has taken to honouring their author each year with the Jane Austen Festival. Over 3,500 Austen fans flock to the city, many in their Regency finery and many coming from abroad. You can join the throng and follow the author along streets whose buildings look much the same as when she strolled past them over 200 years ago. Dating back to 2001, the festival is the world's largest and longest-running celebration of the Romance writer. Originally created by the Jane Austen Centre in Bath and running over the course of one weekend, 23 years on, it's grown into a 10-day festival with more than 80 events. And to tell us more, I'm delighted to be joined now by author and broadcaster Jenny Trent Hughes. Jenny, let's have a look at you. You look absolutely splendid. Well, welcome to GB News. Tell me a little bit about what you're wearing.
I'm wearing, well, usually I have a character called the Queen of All Hearts, and I have a fantastic outfit designed by Bath Theatrical. I was on the way up to you this morning. I was so excited I was going to meet you finally, and because of the trains, I didn't get to come. So I had to run back to my boat. I live on a boat, which is why the background is a bit odd, and I'm in a Regency outfit.
Well, look, I'm absolutely delighted that you have put the outfit on for us, because also someone was bringing a dress to you and her train was cancelled as well. So dressing up is obviously a big part of it. Have you any idea how many people dress up in order to participate?
Quite a few thousand.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamonn Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, more front pages to come and an update on the boxing, which has concluded. Bad news for Anthony Joshua. But let's just continue our conversation about the sleaze row affecting the Prime Minister. If you've got a second, Harry, can you get me that Mail on Sunday front page again? And it's bad news for the PM. The sleaze row continues. Sir Shameless is at it again. Hours after Wardrobe Gate erupted, Prime Minister and Sue Gray enjoy Spurs freebie with lobbyist who backed hated breakaway football Super League and advises tax-avoiding tech giants. John Altman, my top pundit this evening, you've said that you think that Boris Johnson might be not even as bad. You think that Keir Starmer is sort of more greedy and self-serving than Boris Johnson, is that
Nina's
right?
not going to agree, but from what I can see and what he's been doing, and I reckon there could be other goings on as well, fingers in the pie, as I said earlier.
I
think
so
he possibly is.
with you
So you have trust issues with Keir Starmer. Does he enjoy your confidence as Prime Minister still?
Not at all. I didn't vote for him. No, and not impressed by him really.
Right?
There's something about him that I just doesn't seem right. He's got a few secrets up there. He's all out for number one, I reckon. He'll say he's a man of the people, maybe, but I don't
disagree with you.
I would love to love our leader, but I don't. I would love to love our Prime Minister. I really would. But it's very hard. It's very hard, isn't it?
But do you not think they're all like that, or do you think there's something uniquely self-serving about Keir Starmer?
Yeah, I do, actually, yeah.
I mean, do you have anything to sort of back that up? I mean, I suppose these stories back it up, don't they, Neil?
Yeah, precisely. Starmer is the most self-serving politician I think we have had in this country for very, very many years. Now, I understand I turned against Boris Johnson, incidentally, Nina. I completely lost any faith in him. I voted for him in the 19 election, but I completely would walk away because of Partygate. That really...
You disowned Boris Johnson?
Because of Partygate.
Yeah.
It was Partygate. But this is the... there is a remorseless grabbing of things here. This is a man who's constantly on the make, and the person who's benefiting from it, in my view, is Keir Starmer. And I think in just 2 months he has thrown away so much of the trust that millions upon millions of people in this country put in him, because he promised so many things, a better Britain.
And he will deliver them. He will deliver them. No,
Nina, briefly, have you
people
not...
have been does nobody go to Wimbledon? You sit in the royal box? Politicians do that all the time.
Do you think that there's any bad aspect to this for kids?
The winter fuel allowance is a disgrace.
I think it's...
People will die because of that.
I think it's because...
That winter fuel allowance being cut, old people will die.
I mean, have you, in living memory, can you think of a government that's had a worse start than this new government?
No, I cannot. But this is because the media has piled on.
Well, the media has reported what's happening.
No, they have piled on with relish. And
Don't kill the messenger, Nina.
No, I'm not.
They have the drama's there to pile on, isn't it?
I mean, and this business with Sue Gray is misogynistic in the extreme.
Oh, no.
She is a middle-aged, strong woman, and people hate that. They're terrified of that. And so,
honestly, it's nothing to
a
do with
man
that
who earned £3,000 more than the Prime Minister would not have got this.
I think it's dodgy that a senior civil servant goes on to become a very political chief of staff in a Labour government. That seems highly inappropriate.
She is not a civil servant. She resigned. She resigned to join the Labour Party.
And are you allowed to change professions?
She is basically what's called a SPAD, a special advisor.
OK, briefly, and also, did Keir Starmer interview her or talk to her while she was a senior civil servant? That hasn't been denied.
No, it certainly hasn't. No. In fact, there were meetings.
OK.
That they had contact.
OK.
And what's wrong with that?
Last word. Well, I think it's inappropriate for a senior civil servant to become
the one who if she knew she was going to go, then she wanted to go. Why not change? I mean, people jump ship all the time.
All right. Well, listen. Let's bring you up to date on what's happened in the boxing. Daniel Dubois has beaten the British boxer Anthony Joshua by knockout in the 5th round at Wembley Stadium.
Wow.
He knocked Joshua down 4 times in 5 rounds, so it was a very tough night for Anthony Joshua. The fight has just finished a few moments ago. So Dubois retains the belt. Do you enjoy a bit of boxing, Nina?
I think it's legalised violence and should be banned as a sport. And what knockout is a brain injury. It's some kind of... if you fell over, on the pavement and you hit your head, that's concussion. Somebody actually hitting you, that's the same thing. It's legalised violence. I think Anthony Joshua is a great guy. I've seen him on telly a bit, and he's a lovely human being. But this is just awful.
I'd like to see the stats. I would have thought there were probably more injuries in football and rugby, Neil.
I think that there may be, but then again, many more people play football, and I really worry about head injuries in football as well. I have no disagreement with you, really. It's not I don't see it as a sport, but it is a fascinating spectacle, and I understand why people
It's a blood sport. If anybody's ever... I've never been to a boxing match, but I heard somebody describing it, and if you're sitting, near the ropes or, close up, there's blood everywhere.
Well, with that in mind, Nina, I would avoid the UFB. What's it called? UFB? it's a big American sport.
UFC.
UFC, that's even worse. Not as bad as BBC. Now, what do you think? Do you like boxing?
I enjoy it, yeah. I mean, I love Rocky, the movie.
Oh, it's incredible.
But I'm not really... I don't see a lot of it. I haven't been to a boxing match for a long time. But I'm like Nina, I worry about the damage that can be caused. Long-term... bashing of the head,
That is a worry.
We saw with the lovely Muhammad Ali, who wasn't too good towards the end.
Where you try to inflict brain damage on your opponent. I mean, football and rugby, it's a tangential injury.
It's high stakes, which is why millions watch it. But let's now look at our final front page. Sunday Telegraph, terror suspects waltz in on small boats, says Robert Jenrick. Proof, if we needed it, John, that we need to stop the boats, because actually there are people coming into the country whose backgrounds we don't know. Some of them could be linked to terror groups.
I don't understand it. I cannot understand it. I mean, did Starmer say he was going to stop the boats? I just cannot understand. We have a navy, we have police. I just cannot understand how it's been going on so long. And it is a worry. These people, I mean, I agree with people coming from awful countries whereby warfare has ruined their lives, etc. And they come here and they bring a skill and they work. There was someone from Poland talking about how they don't allow anybody in unless they're going to work and they have a work permit. I think it's a complete mess, and it's a huge worry, isn't it?
It is, Neil.
If it's true,
Robert Jenrick,
I wouldn't be surprised.
He speaks with authority on this subject. He resigned as immigration minister under the last government.
Yeah, that's the significance of this. It's not just that it's another Tory hopeful making these claims. Jenrick was actually in a position to know. He was the immigration minister.
Yeah.
You can't just dismiss this and, you know, say, well, it's just a politician politicising. He knows. And when you read this, he reckons there's at least 1,000 people who are coming who have been identified as either suspicious or linked to crime.
In a couple of seconds, this Tory leadership will be decided on immigration, won't it?
Well, if they're going to go to the right, it will be, yes. But I mean, Jenrick is making such a shameless sort of bid for this. He's, you know, he's trying to inflame things. He's trying to, you know, inculcate, you know, fear and terror in the population.
OK. Well, listen, folks, let me tell you, it's been a very busy night. Thank you so much for your company, watching on TV, listening on the radio. My brilliant pundits, I think you'll agree, all smashed it out the park. We're back tomorrow at 9 o'clock with My Big Opinion, My Take at 10, and an exclusive interview with Al-Fayed's biographer. Busy show tomorrow, but next up, headliners.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Some of us certainly ended astronomical summer with a bang. We've seen a few thunderstorms around across southern areas today, and there's the continuing chance that we see a few of those pushing across central into parts of Wales. We might clip into the far south of Northern Ireland as we head throughout the evening. We've then got a second pulse of thundery rain pushing its way into the far south of England as we head towards dawn on Sunday morning. Quite muggy and humid in amongst all of this as well. Temperatures not dropping too far at all, but it will be chillier for the northwest of Scotland underneath the clearer skies here. Might see a touch of frost in some very sheltered areas. And for Scotland, Sunday is certainly one of a east-west split. The best of the sunshine will be across those western areas. Quite a nice fine start for Lewis and Harris, the Highlands, Argyll and Bute as well, but the clouds still lingering along those eastern coastal areas, maybe with some drizzle around at times. It will try and burn back a bit as we head throughout the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunshine during the afternoon as well, but for much of Wales, central southern areas of England, this band of rain will be steadily pushing its way northwards with some very heavy pulses possible, and there is a rain warning in force throughout the day, so do take care if you are travelling or out and about. Some disruption is certainly possible. Again, it is going to be quite warm and humid even amongst all this rain, so temperatures where you do start to see some of those sunny spells emerging into the afternoon could still see highs around 20 or 21 degrees Celsius. 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is certainly also possible for the likes of Oban and Fort William pulses in western Scotland. This area of low pressure that's bringing that rain on Sunday is going to become quite slow moving on Monday as well, and so there's potential for further heavy rain around at times. There's still some uncertainty just in regards to the exact placement of this rain, so it's worth keeping up to date with the forecast. But another rain warning is in force throughout much of Monday. Again, some disruptions, surface water issues and spray on roads is possible. Generally dry further towards the north, but you'll start to see some of that rain pushing into the far north of Scotland, and that heralds in a slight change as we head over the next few days. Things turning cooler with a northerly wind setting in. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible £36,000 to be won in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having an extra £3,000 each month to play with. And because it's totally tax-free, you get to keep every penny and spend it however you like. We could be paying for your entire year until 2025. How amazing would that be? For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I've got a question for you here, Mr. Motivator. Each time I will try and do a couch to 5K, and I start and then it stops, and then I'll have another go. It's baby steps, though, for most of us, isn't it? You've got to start slow, because I also see people go out and run, do that, and then do too much, and they get completely exhausted and think, I can't do this anymore. So what is it? You have to start slowly, right? Is that fair?
Well, with everything that you do need to start slowly. But what's more important than that? You need to identify an activity that suits you. Now, the thing is, you may want to do couch to 5K, but let's say you have a preponderance for swimming. Maybe swimming is what you really like, or dancing is what you like. You find the activity that suits you. And I have to say, you'll never see a happy jogger. They're happy afterwards. They have enjoyed the experience, but they're not happy whilst doing it. But you must start with everything.
Have you ever been out of shape, though? Because whilst I find you really inspiring, I feel as though you've always been in good nick, and therefore it's kind of come easy to you. Whereas I think, you know, there are plenty of people who have a tendency to put on weight. I mean, I can look at chocolate and I feel like I put on weight. You know, and it's a slog, especially if you've taken your foot off the gas for a while. Getting back into it's brutal. What do you know about that?
Well, let me just say this to you, that in the early days, and I can go back, don't forget 71 years, our activity level was much higher. But this is something that's really just happened in the last 30 years. So those 30 years, we have changed. We now spend more time in front of the computer. We spend more time sitting down. So that's why we need gyms, and we need to get up. Now, gyms don't suit everybody. And that's why I do free classes. Free club, you can join. Everyone can get access to movement in their home. But you have got to make that first step.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Some breaking news that Daniel Dubois has retained his IBF World Heavyweight title with a fifth-round knockout of Anthony Joshua. AJ was aiming to become a three-time World Heavyweight champion at the expense of IBF title holder Dubois in front of a star-studded crowd at Wembley tonight. But it was Dubois who came out firing from the off. A big Dubois right hand dropped Joshua in the opening round. A solid right hand to the chin then ended the bout in a KO in round 5. In other news, Sir Keir Starmer has promised to protect public services from extreme cuts as he made a bid to move on from rows over donations and strife at Number 10 after arriving at the Labour Party conference earlier today. Speaking to the Sunday Mirror newspaper on the eve of the conference, the Prime Minister said his government was not going down the road of austerity like that pursued by David Cameron's administration. He's intent on shifting that attention away from rows over those donations and the internal Number 10 infighting. Upon arrival, Sir Keir Starmer said the conference would show how Labour are fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country.
Change has started. And today we're going to set out, and over the next coming days, how we're fixing the foundations and rebuilding our country. So enjoy conference. Very, very good to be here.
Today was day 2 of the Reform Conference in Birmingham, with party leader Nigel Farage giving his farewell address earlier this afternoon. Last night, Mr Farage told supporters he believes Reform can win the next general election, given the number of people that agree with their principles. He also explained what drove him to stand as Clacton's MP once the election was called earlier this year.
At almost every level, we've been betrayed. And then I thought about what was happening on our streets. And frankly, I thought to myself, Britain is broken. And then I couldn't help it. Well, if Britain is broken, then logically, Britain needs reform.
And the Met Office has issued a further weather warning with heavy rain and thunderstorms forecast for the rest of the weekend. The alert remains in place throughout today and covering Wales, the Midlands, the southwest and parts of the southeast. The forecasters also warned that people should expect damage to buildings as a result of lightning strikes, disruption to public transport as well, and flooding, all within the affected areas. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. Now it's over to headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.